Hello, this is Angelia, and you are listening to or watching the podcast, Why You Do What You Do. The podcast that talks about human development and psychology to try and help you figure out maybe a little bit more about why you do what you do. And last time we had left off talking about the adolescent growth spurt. If we all remember that, I remember I grew up several inches, in one summer, and all my pants were high waters and I was embarrassed. But it happens to us, and a lot of people are happy about it. Some people are not happy about it. It just all depends, on where your mindset's at that point in time. But we're going to take back up on that. Boys and girls grow differently, of course, and we do, like we already talked about. In middle school, the girls are taller and bigger than the boys. But then in high school, the boys pass the girls up and, usually become taller and heavier. A boy becomes larger overall. His shoulders wider, his legs longer relative to his trunk, and his forearms longer relative to his upper arms and his height. And usually that's when we start noticing those boys, in high school who've gotten some shoulders and, got that tapered look that, most women like. Even the eye grows faster, causing an increase in nearsightedness, a problem that affects about 1/4 of 12 to 17-year-olds. A girl's pelvis widens to make childbearing easier, and layers of fat are deposited under the skin, giving her a more rounded appearance. The girls, we start to get some curves, and the boys start noticing that too. The lower jaw becomes longer and thicker. The jaw and nose project more, and the incisor teeth become more upright. And this is all preparing us to become, physical adults. Because each of these changes follows its own timetable, parts of the body may be out of proportion for a while. And like I said, we were talking about something like that the other day, and I said one of my sons' nose grew really fast, and he was concerned, but it all evened out. And like I said, his nose is even a little smaller than the average nowadays. So, the result is the familiar teenage gawkiness and noticed in Peter Van Damme, which accompanies unbalanced accelerated growth. So again, we might feel a little awkward or, gawky. I know at one point I felt like I was all arms and legs, because that's which saw arms and legs, had this little body, and but eventually I grew a body, so got too much of one now. These dramatic physical changes have psychological ramifications. Of course they do. Anytime your body changes in a certain way, it's going to affect your mind. Most young teenagers are more concerned, about their looks than about any other aspect of themselves. And many do not like what they see in the mirror, and that's a shame, and that's a societal issue, because we've set these, model ideals up, and like I said, a lot of this stuff gets photoshopped, and these people, what you're seeing in the magazine and online, it's not even real. It's fake. You need to talk to your kids when they're growing up about body image, and how about they're fine how they are, that sometimes there are people who are more symmetrical than you, there are people who are less, but that the media kind of promotes what it thinks is going to sell, so sometimes it alters these photos to make it look how they think people who will buy their particular product or thing want this person to look. So, kind of explain to them that all this is not necessarily real. Girls tend to be unhappier about their looks than boys. And that's a part of culture too, because the girls pick on other girls for every little thing. And it's because they're miserable and they want you to be miserable too. And, it's a shame if you went through that, but, teach your girls, some people are just mean. And they're going to say mean things, but, just do your best to let it go. This reflects the greater cultural emphasis on women's physical attributes. Girls, especially those who are advanced in pubertal development, tend to think they are too fat. And that's because of the messages they get, from other girls, from the media, where, everyone's supposed to be this perfect figure. And if you're not, then, you're too fat. And that's just not true. And it's a shame that, our girls feel that pressure. Because actually, the more stressed out they get, the more bad they feel about themselves, the more cortisol they're going to produce, which is going to make them even fatter. So, society has made this a problem. And this negative body image can lead to eating problems. So, if you're depressed and your best friend becomes Little Debbie, then you're going to get even bigger. Concern with body image may be related to the stirring of sexual attraction, which, as we shall see, has been found to begin as early as age 9 or 10. And now, I had a little boyfriend in my neighborhood when I was 9, but I didn't really think of him in that kind of way. And I had a boyfriend in my 5th grade class when I was 10, but I really didn't think of him that way. I was 12 before I first thought about doing it with a boy. So, all of us are different and all ages are different. And you need to talk to that kid by the age of 9 about sex. You might think that's too young, but no, about 4th grade, You need to have that talk with them so they understand that even the first time you can get pregnant, and that, kids can get pregnant too, if they're mature enough. So you need to explain these things to them so that, you don't have, I've heard of, 10, 11-year-old girls who get pregnant, by older boys. And, that's just horrific to me. And, somebody should have said something like, hey, this can happen, to keep it from happening. So, be aware. The primary sex characteristics are the organs necessary for reproduction. Of course, we all know what those are. I don't have to tell you what those are. Hopefully you know what those are. In the female, the sex organs are the ovaries, fallopian tubes, uterus, and vagina. In the male, the testes, penis, scrotum, seminal vesicles, and the prostate gland. If you're giggling right now, just grow up already. Jeez. During puberty, these organs enlarge and mature. Of course, and I'm sure we all who are went through it. And sometimes you're like, whoa, why is this a thing that's happening? But it's normal. Everyone does it. In boys, the first sign of puberty is the growth of the testes and scrotum. And one of my sons commented, why is this happening? There were other words involved, but I was like, it just happens. As you grow, stuff grows, and, it's just happening. In girls, the growth of the primary sex characteristics is not really apparent because these organs are internal. And I made a joke with a guy that I was on set with one time for a play we were doing. And it was really hot, and we had a fan, and we were like, oh, it's just really hot. And he said, man, I'm sweating my balls off like that. And I said, well, that's one good thing. My gonads are up inside where they belong. And he cracked up. He said, oh my gosh, that's the dirtiest thing I've ever heard you say. And then I was embarrassed and got all red. I was like, I probably should have said that. The secondary sex characteristics are physiological signs of sexual maturation that do not directly involve the sex organs. For example, the breasts of females and the broad shoulders of males. Because these things are not directly involved in sex. They can be in a way. We're not going to talk about that. But, in general. Other secondary sex characteristics are changes in the voice and skin texture, muscular development, and the growth of pubic, facial, axillary, that's your underarm hair, and body hair. And I'm sure we can all remember when that first started. You know, an adult around me, I'm not going to say who because it was so inappropriate, made a comment about the shorts I was wearing, because they said if I moved a certain way, they could see what was happening. And I said, "Why are you looking there? That's gross." So they were like, "Don't wear them short shorts again." But, you know, I definitely didn't because I was so disgusted that they said that. The first reliable sign of puberty in girls is the growth of the breasts. And like I said, you know, you might get them sooner, you might get them later. You know, we're all different, and there's no set time that the boobs start to grow. The breasts assume first a conical and then a rounded shape. If you remember that when you were young, you know, you might have these nice pointy little, you know, I remember these little bras that my mom still had that she had showed me from like the 60s when they had these little pointed tips on the end of the bra, and I was like, "Oh, why?" She said, "Well, that's because it was how we wanted to look." But when you were young, you might have had pointy ones, perky ones, if you want to call them that. And as you get older, they get more round and heavier, and then, you know, you get into middle age and gravity takes over, but we don't want to even go there. Some adolescent boys, much to their distress, experience temporary breast enlargement. This is normal and may last up to 18 months. And one of my nephews did that. He got some man boob, and his brother used to tease him about it when he was about, 12, 13 years old. But then it went away and they flattened out. So, again, tell your boys that can be normal. The voice deepens, partly in response to the growth of the larynx, and partly, especially in boys, in response to the production of male hormones. My mom liked a deep voice, and there are women who like the deep voice. Deep voice is okay. I can take it or leave it. I'm more like the person, who can make me laugh and smile, and who I consider to be cute. So, but there are women who get turned on by that deep voice. The skin becomes coarser and oilier. And of course, I'm sure we all remember that. Increased activity of the sebaceous glands, which secrete a fatty substance, may give rise to pimples and blackheads. And I'm sure we all remember that. I seemed to, when I was a teenager, have the pimples always here. Always on this little part of my nose, right here, where, it bent. There was like, I guess oil that sat in there. Or on the forehead, or beside the nose or chin, and that's normal too. And so tell your youngsters, that's normal. You'll outgrow it. If you keep clean, it's better. The cleaner you keep. My grandmother taught me to wash the face with soap at night, and then use a hot rag to open your pores and get, any oil and, stuff that you sweated out at night, and then use a cold rag to close your pores. And so that's what I do, but, everybody has their own little thing. But at this age, abrasive cleaners, the kind with the little stuff in it, are not recommended, because those little abrasive pieces can get into the pores and cause breakouts. So don't use those abrasive cleaners when you're an adolescent. Pass it on. Acne is more common in boys and seems related to increased amounts of testosterone. So the more testosterone the boy has, the more breakouts he's going to have. So, that's a shame. But it happens. Pubic hair, which at first is straight and silky and eventually becomes coarse, dark, and curly, appears in different patterns in males and females. And if you're giggling, stop, grow up. it happened to us all, unless you had a serious malfunction of some genetics. It happened, and just like I said, talk to your kids when they're about 9 years old and tell them it's gonna happen. Um, I had a book, and we passed that book from kid to kid, and said, hey, I'm gonna tell you but here's the book in case you have any questions you don't want to ask me, because sometimes kids don't want to ask, And at that point in time when this was happening, I was a single mother, so the father was not someone they really wanted to go over for the weekend and then ask these questions to. It was awkward for them. But they might not want to ask mom because that's embarrassing. So by providing the book, they could thumb through the book and find any questions, and I think that helped them. Adolescent boys are usually happy to see hair on the face and chest, but girls are generally dismayed at the appearance of even a slight amount of hair on the face or around the nipples, though this is normal. And they might develop some hair there, and we women, we don't want that, so we like to shave or wax or pluck. I remember my grandmother plucked her eyebrows, and I just couldn't stand to watch it because it looked like it just hurt so much, And then, because she grew up in the 30s, and back in that day, them suckers were gone and you drew them on. So I have a picture of my grandma, on her last license that she had. She's got those drawn on eyebrows. But that's how she grew up. So that's what they did, but it's normal. So again, when the girls start freaking out, it's normal. It happens. Tell them. In males, the principal sign of sexual maturity is the production of sperm. A boy may wake up to find a nocturnal emission, an involuntary ejaculation of semen commonly referred to as a wet dream. I could tell a story, but I'm not going to. But some boys are very happy that this has happened, and some boys are rather embarrassed that this has happened. Most adolescent boys have these emissions, sometimes in connection with an erotic dream, but not always. Sometimes it just happens, they might not necessarily been having a dream like that. Let's see. Spermarche occurs at an average age of 13. That's what it's called. Spermarche. Boys in one study reported positive reactions, though about 2/3 were somewhat frightened. And if you're chuckling again, grow up. But because some guys are like, oh, especially if they got no heads up that this might be happening. So, like I said, forewarned is forearmed. The principal sign of sexual maturity in girls is menstruation, a monthly shedding of tissue from the lining of the womb. What Anne Frank called her sweet secret. And most of us hate it. Most of us hated it. I couldn't wait to go through menopause. And I'm like super happy that I did. Like I said, these other women were like, oh, hot flash. Oh, like, I don't even care. We can get through that as long as I don't have to do that every month. I'm done. So, that's something that girls are embarrassed about. And there's considerations. You have to have equipment, to handle this. You can't wear the clothes, especially the white pants or whatever that you might wanted to wear just in case something happens. So, talk to them ahead of time so this doesn't become a big drama in their life. Like I knew a girl who this happened for her first time, in ninth grade, and she was just covered. I mean, she was just covered. She was unprepared. She didn't have nothing with her. And of course, by the time, her back of her pants were covered, we really couldn't do anything about it. And the parents were worked, couldn't be reached. And so she was walking around with this jacket, and it's getting ready to soak through the jacket too. And, I tried to be nice about it, but she didn't believe me at first until another one of her friends said, hey. But forewarn, you know. Send the girl to school with something in her purse when she gets into middle school. I mean, a lot of my friends who weren't having periods yet had pads, and one of my friends had tampons. I felt that to be a little bit odd because a virgin girl probably shouldn't be doing that, but that's just my opinion. Is if you're not sexually active, you shouldn't be putting things up in there. But that's just my opinion. Some people think that's fine and perfectly okay, but the first menstruation, called Menarche, so with the boys it was Spermarche and the girls is Menarche, or some people say Menarche or Spermarche. I say arch because whatever. I've heard it called both, so evidently, who cares? We know what it means. Occurs fairly late in the sequence of female development, so that's the last thing that occurs. The girl gets taller, heavier, rounder, develops breasts and pubic hair. Then the periods start. An indication that ovulation is occurring. So when she starts having periods, she's ovulating. She can get pregnant. And you need to tell them that so that doesn't happen, hopefully. On average, a white girl in the United States first menstruates at about 12 and a half. And a Hispanic or black girl 3 to 6 months earlier. And again, that's because of, heredity and, weight. However, the normal timing of Menarche can vary from ages 10 to 16. So, if you get a 14, 15, 16-year-old girl and she's not started yet, wait, and then when she's 17, if it's still not happening, then you can talk to the doctor and say it's still not happening, because there are late bloomers, and that's okay too. It's a normal thing. A combination of genetic, physical, emotional, and environmental influences may affect the timing of menarche. Age of first menstruation tends to be similar to that of the mother. Bigger girls and those whose breasts are more developed tend to menstruate earlier. As we said, the healthier a child is, the more they develop, and that's nature's way of, keeping us recreating each other, if you know what I'm saying. Strenuous exercise, as in competitive athletics, can delay menarche. Again, the more you exercise, the later it can come on. There are athletes who they don't have them as often as normal people, and that's because they're developing more testosterone in performing a lot of physical activity, and that keeps them from having the periods. Nutrition also is a factor, because like I said, the better you're eating, the heavier you get, the faster you mature. But some obese women also don't have periods, and it's because sometimes the body gets too big and produces too much estrogen, which is the fat producing hormone, and also fat feeds it, so that they don't have periods. Even when these factors are controlled, girls with early menarche tend to be aggressive or depressed, or to have poor family relationships, and that all goes to the we're going to get into some of that a little bit later, but your environment can also affect how your body matures. A longitudinal study suggests that the relationship with the father may be a key to pubertal timing. And don't get weird, it's not what you think it is. Girls who, as preschoolers, had a close, supportive relationship with their parents, especially with an affectionate, involved father, showed later pubertal development than girls whose parental relationships have been cold or distant, or those raised by single mothers. See, it's the opposite of what you thought it was going to be, isn't it? The mechanism by which family relationships might affect pubertal development is not clear, because not a lot of studies have been done on it, and they've made the attempt, but a lot of people don't really want to get into that kind of a study. So, maybe someday. One suggestion is that human males, like some animals, may give off pheromones, odorous chemicals that attract mates. As a natural incest prevention mechanism, sexual development may be inhibited in girls who are heavily exposed to their father's pheromones, as would happen in a close father-daughter relationship. So like in the animal kingdom, the daughters don't come into puberty until they're ready to leave the group, to keep the incestual relationship from happening, because even in nature that's kind of a no-no. They understand that, and hopefully in humans, but I unfortunately know that that's not the case in all humans, that there are predators and monsters out there who don't worry about taboos. They're just gonna do what they want to do regardless of what anybody thinks about that, and that's a shame. On the other hand, frequent exposure to the pheromones of unrelated adult males, such as stepfathers or a single mother's boyfriends, may speed up pubertal development. So, unfortunately, if there's not an involved father around and the girl becomes exposed to the pheromones of non-related males, this can bring on the pubertal development. Since both the father's absence and early pubertal timing have been identified as risk factors for sexual promiscuity and teenage pregnancy, the father's early presence and active involvement may be important to girls' healthy sexual development. So you dads out there, if you're divorced, or just a single dad, or you just got a baby mama that you ain't really involved with, you need to be involved in your daughter's life. Just because she's a girl doesn't mean she only needs mom. Excuse me. You need to teach her, about guys. And by you being involved, this will delay her entrance into puberty, and you can also give her some advice on guys, and keep her from wanting to become sexually active sooner rather than later. A contrasting genetic explanation is that both a father's tendency toward marital conflict and family abandonment and his daughter's tendency toward early puberty and precocious sexual activity may stem from the same shared genes. So there can be a genetic component, and there's really not a lot you can do about that. The best thing is, trying to raise the kid right, do the right thing by the kid, so that this doesn't become a thing, so that you don't have your, high schooler becoming pregnant, because, that's kind of every parent's nightmare when kids start into puberty and start, noticing the opposite sex and wanting to date, because we all know where that leads. A genetic study of 120 men and 164 unrelated women focused on a sex-linked variant of the androgen receptor, or AR gene, which is carried on the X chromosome of affected fathers and can be transmitted to daughters, but not to sons. So there is a genetic component, and if you have an aggressive male, then the daughter might get these same traits. Men with this allele tended to be aggressive, impulsive, and sexually promiscuous, whereas women with the same allele tended to have had early menarche and to have experienced parental divorce and the absence of their biological fathers before age 7, because the father was aggressive and violent, so the divorce happened, and then this enabled her genetic tendency anyway, because of the lack of the father in the household. This hypothesis needs to be tested by genetic analysis of absent fathers and their biological daughters, because as you can probably guess, absent fathers and biological daughters aren't really getting together and wanting to participate in this kind of testing. Psychological effects of pubertal timing depend on how the adolescent and other people in his or her world interpret the accompanying changes. So if you have a positive attitude about it and talk to them about it, they're going to have a positive attitude about it. If you're going to have a negative attitude about it, they're going to have a negative attitude about it. Like I said, you learn what you live. However, early menarche has been associated with depression and substance abuse. And that is also because of other things that may be going on. Because as we know, there's a reason that there's early menarche, and that depression and substance abuse can go along with these other psychological reasons why the child is maturing too fast to begin with. Effects of early or late maturation are most likely to be negative when adolescents are much more or less developed than their peers, when they do not see the changes as advantageous, and when several stressful events occur at about the same time. So like I said, girls can be mean and pick on each other. Boys can also be mean. I heard a discussion in gym about so-and-so's balls, and I was like, oh no, and this was in like 7th grade. So, talk to your kids about stuff being normal, about not making fun of other kids, not being mean. It's not funny, it's mean, Adults need to be more sensitive to the potential impact of pubertal changes so as to help young people experience these changes as positively as possible. Like I said, forewarned is forearmed. So make sure you talk to the kids about what's going to happen to their body, because it's going to happen whether you like it or not. Whether they like it or not. So that's where I'm going to leave you today. Hope this has helped you figure out maybe a little bit more about why you do what you do. Please like and share so we can spread this educational program around the world. If you want to help me, you can go to my YouTube channel and subscribe. If you want to help me even more, you can go to my Patreon page and become a patron. So that's all for now. Until next time.